Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is the MMA breakdown with my recap for UFC 174, Johnson versus Bagautinov. And let me start off by saying I think this was an absolutely horrible card, terrible pay-per-view, definitely the worst of the year and the worst of recent memory. Really bad. A waste of money. I get all the pay-per-views just because I want to see all the fights. I want to stay up to date with the sport, but this was bad, and this is not a good way. These putting on these kinds of pay-per-view cards. This is not a good way to attract casual fans and new fans to the sport. And I think the UFC should take a lot of blame for how boring this card turned out to be. Obviously, you can never control how exciting the fights will be, but the pay-per-view card is just the bottom three fights. These are not pay-per-view caliber fighters. Vincent Prue and Ryan Jimmo, that was a pretty good fight, but I mean those guys, I don't think they should be on the pay-per-view yet. Arlovsky's not a pay-per-view caliber fighter, and Ryan Bader and Cavalcante, I think at best, that's a pay-per-view opener, but real slow night of action. It's not good, but let's run through it. I'll give you my thoughts on everything that happened. And I was only 3 for 9 with the picks I made for this card. I didn't pick the women's fight, and I did not pick the first fight, Sago and Shockley. The picks I did make, I was only 3 for 9. Bad night for my picks, but it happens, and I'll be honest about it. But starting off with the UFC Fight Pass preliminary card, lightweight, Jason Sago TKO Josh Shockley right at the end of the first round. I think Sago looked pretty good for a newcomer, a guy to keep an eye on. He seemed to be a really slick grappler. Was able to get back mount at the end of the first round and really went after the finish with only a few seconds left. Pounded away on Shockley, and ref stopped the fight. Good performance by Sago, and I think he looks like a slightly above average grappler even at the UFC level, so excited to see him again. And Shockley didn't show much here. Didn't have much of a guard. I think he threw up a triangle at one point, but pretty much dominated. We'll just have to see how he does in his next fight. And next up at bantamweight, Michinori Tanaka decisioned Roland Delorme, unanimous decision. I got this one wrong. I thought this was a really disappointing performance by Delorme. He doesn't seem that he's improved much since entering the UFC. He has his skills, and when he can make the fight a brawl, that's when he shines, and it works well for him. But he doesn't seem to be much of a game planner, and Tanaka was just much more physically stronger than Delorme, and was able to use that wrestling surprisingly well for a Japanese fighter. Really took down Delorme anytime he wanted to and was able to hold him down, work some ground and pound. I thought it was a pretty impressive performance for Tanaka. A guy to also keep your eye on, a good debut for him. And Delorme, I think we've seen his ceiling. I think he's still good for some exciting fights, some brawls, but I think that's probably as far as he can go. If you really go back and watch his first fight in the UFC, doesn't seem to be getting much better. Next up on the FX preliminary card, lightweight Tai Hyun Bang knocked out Cajun Johnson in the third round. This was a pretty exciting fight, probably one of the most exciting fights on the card. Both guys were going after it. Cajun Johnson I think he landed a head kick in the first round. Taihan Bang, he was able to land more, was more effective with his striking and seemed to have the bigger power in his strikes. I think Cajun Johnson took him down at one point in the second round. But on the feet, it was back and forth. But Johnson, I think he got dropped one time before getting knocked out, and Bang just had the better power and was able to be more effective and land more strikes, and got the knockout in the third round. That's a concern for Johnson, I think, getting knocked out here, and he suffered that brutal knockout in Tough Nations against Chad Laprice, where he broke his jaw. I don't know. I worry about the guy's health, and he might. I think he might want to consider retirement. I mean, getting knocked out in 2 straight fights like that, but good performance by Bang. He looked totally different here than he did against Mirbek Taisumov. I still don't expect him to do much, but he can throw down with some guys and make for an interesting fight. But yeah, Cajun Johnson, I don't really have too high of expectations for him, but neither. I don't have too many expectations for Bang either, but good knockout for him. Next up at bantamweight, he's the Tiger Jabouin. Got a unanimous decision over Mike the Hulk Easton. Jabouin looked great here. I did pick him to win this fight. Mike Easton, in that first round, right out of the gate, he was very aggressive with his striking, came forward with big combinations, and seemed to really get the better of Eves on the feet. But then Jabouin took him down, and that just was the story for the rest of the fight. Jabouin was able to get that takedown easily. He stuffed all of Easton's takedowns, and he just seemed more athletic and more well-rounded than Easton. Very surprising that Jabouin, the unorthodox kickboxer, was able to out-wrestle Easton. And as the fight went on in the second round, Jabouin was able to do better with the striking when it was on the feet. He landed some real good uppercuts in the clinch, and I think his unorthodox style was just too much for Easton. But Easton, I think it's time to start questioning whether this guy is a UFC caliber fighter at all. I mean, his only wins, except for maybe his win over Ivan Menjivar, his other 2 wins over Papazian and Byron Bloodworth, those guys aren't. I don't think either of those guys are in the UFC anymore. Papazian definitely is, and I don't know about Bloodworth, but he's only beaten the absolute lowest level fighters in the UFC, and he's on a 4-fight losing streak. The fights before this were against top guys, but Jabouin is not a top guy. And he just didn't. I don't know if he has a cardio problem. He came out real hard in that first fight, and in that first round. And I remember since his first fight against Bloodworth, they criticized him for the same thing. He came out really hard in that first round with a lot of crazy movement, a lot of head movement, and Dominic Cruz-like footwork. And he gassed out and faded hard in that second round. He still got the finish in that fight, but he came out super aggressive and just didn't seem to have any gas left. He did win that third round though, was able to get on top of Jabouin right out the round there, but really disappointing and really concerning. I think that Jabouin was able to out-wrestle him here. I think this is one of Jabouin's best performances, one of his best wins in the UFC so far. Jabouin, the problem with him, he hasn't looked great against the guys he has beat. He struggled with guys like Dustin Pegg, Lyle Watson. He's had some more dominant performances against Jeff Hoagland. But since he lost his first fight to Pablo Garza in the UFC, but since dropping down to bantamweight after that, his only losses, I've also only been to pretty good guys. Got knocked out by Pickett and by Eddie Wineland, so that's not bad, and he's beaten everyone else. So I think he's a solid guy, and I think this should move him right into the fringe top 10. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight a guy like Johnny Eduardo next, coming off of a big knockout, or even fighting a guy like Brian Caraway. That's a good win for Jabwin. And Mike Easton, 4 straight losses. I don't think they'll cut him, just my guess. But he's really in desperate need of a win, and he should definitely get a really low-level guy, and he needs to build himself back up. Next up, women's bantamweight fight. Valerie Letourneau got a split decision over Elizabeth Phillips. I thought it was pretty clear. Letourneau won the second and third rounds. Phillips was stronger in that first round, really went after her with the striking, but Letourneau just had more gas and was a lot more technical with her striking in that second and third rounds. And both women fought really hard, even though Phillips was really fatigued. She stayed in the fight, and I'm actually glad that the original fight here fell through and these two newcomers were able to fight. I think they're both great additions to the bantamweight division. They both fought really hard, and I'm excited to see both of them again. But Letourneau looked pretty good. I think you could throw her in there right away with anyone. Not the top women, but Jessica Ai, Sarah Kaufman even, and for Elizabeth Phillips, maybe Raquel Pennington, someone like that. I think they're both good additions to the division, but Letourneau looked pretty good here with the technical kickboxing. Next up at welterweight, the last preliminary fight, Kichi Kunamoto submitted Daniel Sarafian in the first round. I was very critical of Kunamoto in my predictions video. Thought he looked, well, I didn't really remember him much of his fight against Luis Dutra, only that Dutra knocked him out with illegal elbows to the back of the head. But I wasn't expecting much from him. He fought on that Singapore card, so I figured that he was just kind of a really low-level fighter. They just filler for that one of those international cards, but he choked out Sarafian, got his back early, and Sarafian couldn't do much to fend off the choke and submitted him. This was Sarafian's debut at welterweight, and that's not a good way to start off, and he's definitely in a bad spot now, losing 2 straight fights, but his 3rd loss in the UFC. I thought his losses at middleweight against Dalloway and Cesar Mutanche, I thought those were excusable. I think both of those guys are talented. Obviously, Dalloway's on a roll right now, but even Mutanche, who got knocked out by Dalloway, I still think he's a pretty skilled, talented fighter, and Sarafian was better than him on the feet in that fight, just got badly out-wrestled. But I don't know if it was the weight cut, but that's a real bad loss. And for a guy that looked really good on Tough Brazil, really hasn't panned out for him well in the UFC. And Kunamoto, pretty much a no-name, really ran through him quite easily. So that's a good win for Kunamoto. And Sarafian, I hope he can come back from this, but that's a pretty big setback, I think. And I think he, definitely needs a low-level opponent next, and they need to try to give this guy some tune-up fights and build him back up. Moving on to the main card, which again I thought was just terrible. The McDonald and Woodley fight I was excited for, but turned out to be a dud. Even the main event wasn't that exciting, although I always enjoy watching Mighty Mouse. But it was really these bottom 3 fights, especially the bottom 2. Arlovsky and Schaub, I said in my predictions video, why is Arlovsky in the UFC in 2014? This guy was, champion in 2006? His biggest win in the last 3 years is I don't know, Mike Kyle, who's lost to almost everyone. Uh, yeah, terrible fight, and big mistake putting him on the main card. Um, and then Jimmo and St. Preux, the first fight, it was a good fight, but I don't know. I don't know why this is on the main card, but Ovince St. Preux got it says here, verbal submission over Ryan Jimmo in the second round. But St. Preux was really dominating this fight. Jimmo, I thought, would have the advantage on the feet, but that wasn't the case. St. Preux's a prospect, and he's solid. He really picked his shots really well. He hurt Jimmo with I think it was like a push jab at one point. And was able to take Jimmo down and cranked his arm with that chicken wing. And the fight was over. I still don't understand if Jimmo was saying his arm was broken, before Prue cranked on it, or whether the chicken wing is what caused the injury. But it's very suspicious of Jimmo. What everyone's saying. Why would he say his arm is broken? If it was broken, why wouldn't he just tap, or verbally say tap? And that's the second time that he's had a really bizarre injury, just out of nowhere. In the Manoa fight, his ankle or knee, whatever, just gave out in the middle of the fight. But so should definitely be suspicious about his alleged injury. But this was a real good performance for St. Preux, and I think he's ready for that next step. 4 straight wins for him in a row, 3 finishes in a row, and Jimmo is a lot more experienced than him, I feel, against better competition, and St. Preux handled it very easily. He's a big, strong guy. He's got wrestling. Proved that he has good striking here. People are saying match him up with Bader. I think that's a fine matchup. That would be a big test for him. Good win for St. Preux, and I expect him to do well going forward. And next up, the heavyweight fight. Arlovsky getting the split decision over Brendan Schaub. I thought this was just a robbery, no two ways about it. Very boring fight, terrible fight to watch, but that doesn't excuse the robbery. In my eyes, I thought Brendan Schaub clearly won first and third rounds. Even that second round, I didn't think was definitively Arlovsky's, but in that first round, Schaub was able to land his punches when he threw them. Arlovsky, I don't think, landed anything in that first round, and beginning of the second round, Arlovsky hit him with a big shot against the fence, and that third round, Schaub took him down, held him down, and ground and pounded him for the whole round. So I think it was a robbery. All Arlovsky could do was push Schaub up against the fence and just lay there. Classic wall install. Very boring. He's not a UFC caliber fighter, and big mistake putting him on the main card. And I can't remember from which event it was, but one of Dana White's scrums, Luke Thomas had asked Dana White if he had seen any of Arlovsky's recent fights, asking him why he's coming back now, and Dana White said no. He said he just re-signed him because he likes him, which is just ridiculous. And you could see here, Arlovsky was terrible. And it is, concerning, I think, that Schaub couldn't do more to hurt him. You think back to when Schaub fought guys who were far more experienced than him, real veterans like Gabriel Gonzaga, who he dominated on the feet, and then Mirko Cro Cop, who was a tougher test but ended up knocking him out. He seems to really have taken a step back. I did think he looked really good against Mitrione in his last fight, but not being able to do much to Arlovsky here is definitely, I think, concerning for Schaub. But Arlovsky did nothing, just laid on him against the fence. was only able to hold him there because he was bigger, and it wasn't even like he was working knees in the clinch or trying to get a better position against the fence. Literally just laying his body out on Schaub against the fence. It was a horrible fight to watch, but I thought Schaub got robbed. I don't care to see Arlovsky again in the UFC. Not that he's going anywhere, but if he fights any of those top 10 guys, Schaub isn't even ranked in the top 10. If he fought Strub or Mark Hunt, any of those guys, I think he'd get killed. And what's the point of seeing him fight the lower end of the division, especially at heavyweight? I don't like that he's in the UFC. And next up, Ryan Bader got the unanimous decision over Rafael Cavalcante. Real good performance by Bader. Really proved that he's not with those elite guys yet, but he's just below them. Rafael Cavalcante had that position going into this fight, and Bader, showed, because most of Bader's wins have been over really low-level guys after he's lost to top contenders. He had the knockout over Jason Brills after losing to Tito Ortiz. He had the win over Rampage, but then they give him guys like they gave him Matt Yushchenko after he lost to Machida. After losing to Teixeira, they gave him Perosh, and this was a much more skilled and tougher opponent for Bader. I mean, it was a former Strikeforce champion. So to really dominate Cavalcante like that, I think this was a really good performance for Bader, and shows that he has the potential to still possibly one day get a win over one of those elite guys at light heavyweight. But Cavalcante just looked uninspired. I don't know. I just from watching his performance, I get the feeling he's not taking this too seriously. His career in the UFC, had the bizarre loss to Silva, and just didn't go after it on the feet like he should have. And when Bader took him down, he just had nothing for Bader off his back. Bader pushed the higher pace, seemed to have better cardio. Even on the feet, Bader seemed better until that third round where Cavalcante hit him with a few big bombs, but couldn't keep it up. Bader got the takedown again, and that's how he should have been fighting from the first round. And bad performance for Cavalcante. At least for right now, I'm writing him off as a contender in the division. And Bader, again, over in St. Preux would be a good fight, although I think that would be a bit of a step down from Cavalcante, but still a good fight. I'd really like to see him fight Phil Davis. Both of them being wrestlers, even though Davis is coming off of a loss. Davis has the wins over Machida, has that win over Gustafsson. I think if Bader could beat him, that would still be a big win. But I think this is one of Bader's best performances of his UFC career, considering the level of opponent. Yeah. Next up in the co-main event, Rory McDonald decision Tyron Woodley. Another boring fight, but can't really blame either guy. These are two high-level guys. And Rory McDonald really won this fight by managing distance. I don't think I've ever seen a performance where someone just really used that so effectively and so dominantly as a tool to win the fight. McDonald did land his strikes. He had the more technical striking, went to the body a lot, was throwing that question mark kick, but really was able to win this fight by coming forward and just keeping Woodley with his back against the fence, and Woodley could not get away from that position, could not press forward, could not do anything, but just circle around the cage with his back to the fence. And real technical win for McDonald. I was wrong about this fight. I thought Woodley's pressure, his aggressiveness, his explosiveness, I thought that would all be enough to overcome McDonald's technical striking, but McDonald totally dominated this fight and showed that you can't just you're not going to get to the top just with athleticism and big power. In that sense, a really good performance by McDonald. I still, I miss the old McDonald, the guy who smashed Che Mills and Mike Pyle, the guy who ragdolled Nate Diaz, but I think that guy's just gone, and we have to accept it. A much more technical finesse fighter now, but there's no doubt about it. That was a big win for him. Tyron Woodley was right there in the top 5, and McDonald totally shut him down and dominated him. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't great to watch, but he's earned his spot as a top contender. A lot of people seem to be upset that the winner of Lawler Brown is promised the next title shot over McDonald. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree that McDonald deserves it over Lawler or Brown. I mean, Lawler just beat McDonald, and if Brown beats Lawler, that's a huge win. So I think McDonald does need to wait his turn, and people are saying he should fight the winner of Kim and Lombard. I think that's fine. That's great. I don't know if this technique-heavy performance, though, gets the job done against Hendricks. I think if McDonald pushed Hendricks up against the fence like that, I think Hendricks would throw a lot more, even with his back to the fence, and he would really pursue that takedown. Woodley got one desperation takedown in this fight, but couldn't hold McDonald down at all. He was right back up, and just really disappointing to see Woodley not go for it. I thought he should have really gone for broke, even with his back up against the fence, with as much power and explosion as he has, but just couldn't do anything. McDonald totally shut him down. Woodley was working some nice leg kicks at one point. Looked like he hit McDonald with one real hard one that buckled him, but he got stuck and looked like he didn't even want to look for a way to turn this fight around. Really good one for McDonald. In the main event, Demetrius Johnson decisioned Ali Bagautinov. This was another fight where Bagautinov was able to press Mighty Mouse up against the fence a lot, and he was a lot stronger than I had anticipated him being. I think he did get more takedowns in the fight too. I think Mighty Mouse got one at one point. I can't remember, but he pressed Mighty Mouse up against the fence, but Mighty Mouse was able to get that tie clinch and just land a bunch of knees to the chin of Bagautinov, and on the feet, Johnson just had too much speed. He was faster. I think Bagautinov, the first round I actually scored for him. Every judge gave him every single round, which I don't really disagree with, but I do think that first round and even the second round I thought was kind of close. I thought you could have argued it for Bagautinov, but 3 through 5 was all Johnson. He's really made that tie clinch a big part of his game, very effective with it. Great to see landing those knees to the chin. Great performance by him. I will say, though, Bagautinov was able to take him down once or twice. I think that might be the recipe to beat Johnson, as crazy as it sounds, because Johnson has always been such a great wrestler in MMA. But a guy like Zach Makovsky, who Johnson says, is a guy to pay attention to and a guy who deserves a shot at him, that could be interesting. Some of these guys that are more muscular, more bulkier at flyweight than Johnson, I think they might be able to give him some trouble, and especially a really talented grappler and wrestler like Makovsky. I think that's an interesting matchup. Obviously, I think they should do the rematch with Dodson, even though after Dodson's last win over Moraga, I don't think that kind of conservative performance will work against Johnson. But now that I'm thinking about Makovsky, why not match up Dodson and Makovsky? I think that would be a really interesting test for Dodson. He's been fed guys who will stand with him. other strikers, but a guy who's going to go in there and just look to wrestle like Makovsky. If Dodson can, win impressively over a guy who's going to fight a different way than Montague or Moraga want to fight on the feet, I think that would be a really big win for Dodson, and shows that he can win in a different kind of way. But Johnson, I think, is super dominant. Love watching him fight. Even this fight wasn't that exciting, but the run he's been on is incredible. To think that he beat John Dodson a year and a half ago is kind of crazy. When you think of how good Dodson's been doing, but Johnson already beat him almost 2 years ago, and since then has had finishes over Moraga and a one-shot knockout over Benavidez. He's a great fighter, really great, and I think I like that idea of Dodson and Makovsky, and Johnson beats the winner of that fight, and then I'd like to see him move up to bantamweight and fight any of those guys, whoever's champion. It'll be a great super fight, I think. Either whoever's champion at that point, Dillashaw, Barao, Cruz, those would all be great fights. And Bagautinov, he's tough. He fought hard. Never got seriously hurt in this fight, but in the near future, I don't know if there's I don't know if he's going to make the improvements he needs to beat a guy like Johnson. I think that's kind of it, a really thin and new division like this. I think, Johnson's just shown that he's better than everyone. So that's my recap for UFC 174, Johnson versus Bagautinov. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Please like the video, comment with your thoughts, subscribe. I'll be back with my predictions for the next doubleheader, Tahuna versus Marquardt, and Swanson versus Stevens, which I think is one of the best fight night cards we've gotten in a while. That Swanson versus Stevens card. I think it's really stacked. And then after that, I'll have my predictions for 175 and recaps for all the events. So thanks a lot, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.